Hello and welcome to Real Loan Talk with Sonia. We're so glad that you joined our channel today. I want to cover today the question that I oftentimes get as a private money company. What is the difference between a private money fund and private money investors? Well, it's a lot like how it sounds. When you have a private money fund, you have multiple investors all together in one fund. They all put their money in, and then that fund decides to disperse the money as needed, as transactions come in. Well, private money investors, oftentimes they are individual people who are funding transactions by themselves and maybe sometimes with one or two and up to 10, I believe, other investors. At SJ Morgan, at our company, we only go up to 2. We don't like to put more than 2 investors on one loan. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of being just in a single investor or a fund? And we want to talk about that a little bit today. If you are somebody who's looking to either invest in private money, if you're going to invest in a fund or as an individual investor, or if you're somebody who was wanting to borrow private money and you're not quite sure, like, what should I do? Should I borrow from a fund or should I borrow from an individual investor? So we want to help answer some of those questions. So let's just start with pros and cons of an individual private investor versus a fund. So now one of the pros, we'll do pros first. So a pro of going to a private individual investor is that they can be super flexible. They can make up their mind about what they want to fund because they're just one person and they don't have to group think, right? They can decide this looks good for me. And of course, we are licensed in the state of California. The Department of Real Estate oversees SJ Morgan, and so we abide by their rules for what we can help broker with an investor, but the investor also has a lot of decisions that they can make about what types of things they want to fund, and a lot of times that creates more leniency than if money was in a fund. So a pro for the fund is that they can fund easily and quickly. They typically have a lot of money in that fund ready to be dispersed, where a private money investor, maybe they have, let's say, $1 million or $2 million to invest, and they have it all out in investments and they only have $100,000 right now. So if you came to them for a loan for $150,000 or $300,000, that investor is not going to be able to fund you because they only have this limited amount. So that would be where we would put more than one investor together and we would have multiple investors with available funds, but perhaps there were no investors for you at the time that's interested in funding what you specifically are bringing to the table to fund. Oftentimes, the fund itself with multiple investors in that one fund is able to fund more transactions. So let's talk about a pro for the fund that's a con for private individual investors. So like we had just mentioned, for the fund, they do set up parameters. So that is, they have to by law set up parameters that we will fund transactions like this so that when the investors put money into the fund, they know, like, let's just make some examples of a fund might say, we won't fund anything with a credit score lower than 600. All of the loan to values in our fund will be 65% or less. We won't fund anybody who's had a bankruptcy in the last 2 years. And so they just make up all these general rules. So as long as when you come along to bring your lending request to them, you fit within their fund parameters, then you should be fine. Then you can abide by what is in that fund. So that leaves them a lot of room to fund a lot of transactions. Now with the private money side, they're not really going by any real written rules when they're making decisions. And so oftentimes what you have on the private money side is that they make these kind of willy-nilly, once bitten, twice shy decisions. And so what I mean by that, they get to decide. So if in the past somebody has borrowed from them and it was a house in, let's just say, a certain neighborhood in the city, or let's say that it was a house that was next, behind the house was a commercial district, and they had lent on a house that backed up to a commercial district in the past, and there was some crazy fire in one of the commercial units, and that affected the house that they had, and it somehow affected their investment in a negative way. From now on, you can pretty much guarantee that that particular investor will no longer fund any houses, any loans on houses or buildings that fit that same criteria. Now, other investors will, because they have never had that problem. Whereas if that were in a fund, the fund maybe would come across something like that, like the building burned down, and they would think that's strange, like and unusual, but they wouldn't stop funding those types of transactions based on some strange and unusual thing that happened. Whereas an investor, they're really more once bitten, twice shy. So that can limit what they can fund. So if you need like more guarantee, you kind of really need to have both of these options in your pocket. So there's really kind of the next question that we can go to is like, how would you decide? You need to seek funds and you're not sure, like, how do I find the fund? How do I find the individual investor? And so what you really need to do that would be the best for you, or the easiest for you, I would say, is to go to a mortgage broker, which I'm a mortgage broker. Our company, we're brokers. We broker to the private individuals, and we also broker to funds. So we would know these are the rules for this fund, these are the rules that these individual investors have set up, and vice versa. So when you come to us with your request, we can say, hey, you know what, like you don't quite fit into this fund's parameter. Maybe their parameters that everybody has to have a 700 credit score or higher. And so then we would shift you over to maybe this company that is like a 660 credit score and higher if your score was like a 670. So a mortgage broker helps you determine, like we've already done the shopping for you, we help determine that this would be the best for you or that. And sometimes we'll say like, hey, look, we can do private money, this is how quickly it will close, this is what the terms will be, or we can go and try to get this fund, and this is what the terms of that fund will be. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with a broker, how to get the funds that you need for a transaction, we'd be happy to speak with you. Send us a message, let us know. If this is interesting information for you, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.